Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Let's go ahead and get into it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. This is yet another installment in Geeky Gentleman History Month, the month in which we discuss the contributions that Geeky Gentlemen have made to history, but that have been ignored by biased educational system, except that's not at all what we do. Joining me today is Rasco's Modern Life. I'm, of course, your ever-present host, Sid Part 2. And we're going to be discussing something kind of different today. It's a documentary, actually, called What Our Fathers Did, A Nazi Legacy. But before we get into that, I just want you, the listener, to know that you can download episodes of Geeky Gentlemen and listen to them on the go. There's a link in the description of this video to download this episode, so you can go do that. Or, if you want to look through the Geeky Gentleman playlist and look at old episodes, there are 340, maybe close to 50-something of them. Go do that. Leave a comment on the episode. I will upload it to the website so you can download it and listen to that on the go. In any case, Rasco, what was your reaction to this?
I thought this was actually really cool.
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting thing. I guess what I'm... You know, the more I've thought about it, and it's interesting because you can tell the title comes from just a moment of conversation these two guys are in.
Yeah.
But the title is really, really poignant to me because What Our Fathers Did just is history, right?
Yeah.
Like, that phrase could be used to describe all of history in a way. And I mean, if, you know... Not to be sexist or whatever, you can change it to parents, but still, there's something more poetic about it with the father thing. I don't know.
Coming from a man.
Yeah, I don't know. Men are in control of history. It's kind of hard to deny that one, so. But, don't get me wrong, plenty of women fuck shit up royally, too.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
We're all equally suckish.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, this is just a really interesting idea, and we'll describe just the basic premise of it. But this is a documentary that follows a Jewish lawyer in the International War Crimes Court, and he does interviews between these two German men who are like in their 70s or whatever by this point.
Yeah.
Probably 80s, actually. And they are, each of them, the sons of prominent Nazi figures.
Members of Hydra.
No, just Nazis. And so it's just this series of conversations and arguments between the two of them. And what's really fascinating is you have one guy who is, like, obviously very aware and very... apologetic in one regard or another for the actions of his father. But you have another guy who, like, does not want to accept what his father was responsible for.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
And so it's this really fascinating... Like, he'll admit that his father was a member of the Nazi Party and was in command in Poland and was in command of parts of the Holocaust. But because no one can produce, like, a specific document signed by him that, led directly to people's deaths...
And then they did.
it's really vague, right? Like, even when they do, he's like, oh, well, no, it's not really his signature or whatever. He dances around it so much.
I mean, it's just ultimate levels of intellectual dishonesty.
And that's what I found really fascinating, is because that's kind of what I think, not just people who are on the wrong side of history, but I think just people in general do, is they have a feeling, they have their biases, their background, whatever it is, and so they cannot conceive, you'll never be able to logically get them to the point where they can accept what they don't want to believe.
Yeah.
Like, the only conceivable way you'd ever be able to get that guy to admit that his father helped perpetrate the Holocaust.
Yeah, like footage. Literally of him, like, killing a Jew.
Yeah, you'd need that, or you'd need to, like, take him back in time and show him, like, it happening. And that's the crazy part to me, is it kind of fits in with the narrative after the war, after Germany lost, of I was just following orders, and I remember I took an oral history class my first year of college, and I don't remember exactly how we got onto the subject of the Holocaust, and we were discussing the idea of, well, did these guys choose to do it or not? And my firm belief has always been every Nazi chose to do what they were doing. And someone confronted me and was like, well, if they refused, then they would have been killed too. Doesn't fucking matter. Refuse. They can't kill all of them. And I feel like...
Or like, you know, like, even, like, started, like, an insurgency or something, like, right? Like, aren't there other, like...
And there were small pockets of German resistance. The Swing Kids were an example of that. But just the idea that they're not responsible because to question it would have put their lives on the line too is so absurd. And it's one of the arguments this guy tries to make is, oh, well, my father was trying to help from the inside. Like, dude, you know that's not true.
Yeah, it's like, it's one thing if, like, you, like, there needs to be some sort of, like, observable, like, evidence of, like, here's what he did that, like, somehow helped and was going against the Nazis. He can't do that because his father wasn't doing that. He was going along with it, and his argument is that he was, like, personally against it, but went along with it anyway. And it's like, dude, you're probably wrong for one. You're probably lying, but also, even then, that's still not good enough, dude.
And that's so bizarre, too, just this idea that you can be personally against what the Nazis are doing, but still helping them. And it's that kind of, I don't know if this is the right word for it, but it's that kind of liberalism that really bothers me. This idea that you can hold personal opinions, but act in a public way that contradicts those opinions, but that somehow deep down you're a good person still. And maybe there are exceptions to that on some level, you know, assuming the stuff you're doing in public isn't horrible, but this is clearly not one of them. So yeah, it's really interesting because, you know, I don't think the guy's unique. I think a lot of people think that way about shit that their families have done. You know, we still have in the South people that celebrate, you know, they always talk about being proud of their Southern heritage and stuff. And I just don't understand that, but I can't. You kind of see where I'm going with that, or no? I'm not sure how vague.
You know, yeah, it's one of those. So there's more than like just being personally malicious that's bad, right? So you can be a bad person because you're just a coward and you'll never stand up for somebody else or something like that, right? You can be a bad person because you just are totally apathetic in the face of atrocities. That's equally as bad as if you're just maliciously you just like are malicious and you don't care about anyone because of that. Like, those are equally bad because the effect is equal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, and the same thing goes for like anyone, like people that, like we were talking about Mel Gibson, where his actions contradict who maybe he is as a person. Maybe that's true. I don't know, but that's up to Mel Gibson to forever make sure that he never becomes that person again, right? Like, you have reasonable suspicion at this point to think that of someone. In this case, yeah, like, you have reasonable suspicion to think of his father as a coward if he's just going along with this the entire time. And, you know, it doesn't matter what his personal convictions are at that point. Like, dude, the effect is still the same. And you're causing just as much harm. So it's one thing if you go along with it and somehow, like, you try to, like, actually gather like a group of like-minded people and then try to like overthrow the Nazis from the inside. That's one thing. But his father was not doing that, right?
At best, even like if you're more than generous, which, you know, fucking Nazis do not deserve, but even if you're more than generous and assume that he was personally against it and was trying to, you know, just do his best to make sure it wasn't as bad as it could be or something. Because that seems to be the argument this dude's making that his dad was doing the whole time. And, like, even if you give it all that it's still terrible.
Yeah, like, dude, like, at that point, like, run away. Like, run away! Get, like, a truck, load up, like, 8 other guys with you, and just drive away. And if you ever get, like, pulled over by, like, a group of Nazis, be like, hey, we're heading to this place because we were commanded to go here, yada, 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 and just go on with your day. And leave and betray the Nazis. Do that. Like, what's stopping them from at least trying that, right? Don't you owe it to the Jews to at least try that, right? Risk your life, because if you don't risk your life, their life is the consequence. So you owe it to them to do it, to at least, you know, consider your life and their life to be equal, right?
Yeah, and then the other argument that he made, and this is just a really interesting study on how people rationalize immoral behavior. The other argument he tried to make is if his father hadn't been there, someone else who was more malicious would have. And it's still no excuse.
Yeah, because it comes down to the individual at that point, right? Like, that's, you know, you can't lose sight of the fact that at the core, everyone's an individual, and so, you know, you can do it in that greater good sense, like, oh, this was for the greater good, because if you really look at the long term, but at the same time, dude, you're still doing that, right? Like, you're still doing horrible things. That doesn't make you a good person, right? Like, just because you're doing horrible things for a good reason, you're still morally responsible for everything that you've done. You're morally culpable at that point.
And it's interesting because I think this guy, like, it's not like things didn't happen in Nazi Germany where people in positions of influence worked to save Jews by working within the Nazi system. Most famous example is, of course, Oskar Schindler.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's what gets me, is I think this guy thinks his dad is Oskar Schindler.
Yeah, but it's clearly not the case.
It's clearly not. And, like, you know, that's the other thing is the dude fled. He didn't ever, like, have to pay for his crimes. He fled into the Vatican, which, what the fuck, the Vatican? The fuck? It's such an interesting just look at, not interesting isn't the right word, it's such a sad look at the kind of or the kind of ways in which people justify horrible things. Like I think he goes through a checklist of every type of rationalization throughout history I've heard, or for atrocities I've heard. He goes, well, in the long term, there will be wars. People will die all the time. That'll always happen. But in the moment, in the actual meat of the moment, he wasn't as bad as everyone's making him out to be. All those other kinds of things. Like, if you look at what he did compared to what others did, he wasn't as bad. Maybe, but that's not the point. You can't compare human suffering.
Yeah, like, if you look at his individual case, you don't get to compare that to people that were, like, again, it goes down to what he did as an individual. It's not what other people around him did, right? Like, if I kill someone tomorrow, I don't get to point and say, well, this guy killed 30 people. Look, he killed 30 people. I've only killed one.
Yeah.
Do that.
Exactly, and it's like both of you are awful.
Yeah.
Don't try to construe it.
Yeah, that guy is very, very, very awful, but you're still awful, dude.
So it's just, on one side of my head, I'm fascinated by the kind of mental gymnastics this guy goes through, and just how completely unable to accept anything he is.
Here's the weirdest thing about it. You can learn, so much of how we communicate is through body language. Just look at his body language every time they ask him one of those questions where he literally has nowhere to go but lie and just be dishonest and pretend to, just disbelieve what they're saying. Like, and he's like, he like gets all like, he just doesn't know what to say, and he starts like picking flowers and like stumbling around, like pacing, and he can't look at anyone, and he's, it's like, dude, like, you're so obvious, it's obvious, that deep down, you understand what you're saying is bullshit.
And it's weird because then there's the scene, or not scene, it's a fucking documentary. There's that moment where they go to the neo-Nazi thing. Mm-hmm. The neo-Nazi funeral thing.
Yeah.
Like, he's so proud to be around them.
Yeah, and they're all like, oh, your father's a great man. And he's like, I just love, today was a great day because I got to shake a bunch of people's hands because of the great man that my father was. And it's like, yes, Nazis are telling you your father was great. It's like when the KKK says Donald Trump is the candidate they're endorsing. It means something. Like, they like him because they agree. So if you think that the Nazis are bad, like he claims to, because he's like, oh, my father wasn't one of the bad Nazis, right? So he understands the Nazis were bad. So he's got fucking Nazis telling him his father was a great Nazi, and he's like, this is awesome. It's really, really obvious. He knows it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's... It's so bizarre, because like I was saying, to compare it to stuff here in America, because we have like this whole thing of, oh, well, I'm proud of my Southern heritage. And my reaction to that has always been, what are you proud of? Well, they fought for their beliefs. They fought for the right to enslave people. No, it wasn't about just slavery. It was about states' rights. A state's right to do what? To enslave someone.
Right.
Your ancestors fought and died for slavery.
Yes.
So how can you be proud for that? And it's just this weird connection between, well, A is bad. They fought for A, but they fought bravely, and I'm proud of the braveness with which they fought.
Right, and it's different from someone like Thomas Jefferson, who owned slaves, but at the same time was actively paving the way for slavery to end, right? Like, yes, he was a part of that, and you can look at humanity as a whole and be like, yeah, humanity was really bad. We've been really bad. But when you look at him in that context, when he's paving the way and writing and creating the ideas that we would eventually use to fight for freedom for everyone, like, that's different from somebody who lived in the South, right? And they fought for slavery. They can't make the same argument that it's like, well, it was just the times, right? Like, at the time, slavery was okay. For them, it's different because they weren't actively fighting for a society that would eventually be beyond that. They were fighting to perpetuate that society. And that's the issue here, is that we are allowed to say that certain ideas are worse than other ideas. Certain beliefs are better than others, right? We can do that at this point, right? You can say that.
Yeah, and so this idea of, oh, well, even though he was a Nazi, he was still a good man. And you know what I think is interesting to look at here is the relationships that we're told about that each man had with their father. Because we haven't talked much about the other guy because, you know, he's a rational person.
Yeah, and he's got a very accurate perception of really what was going down in his childhood. And it's really funny because it's not funny, it's kind of sad because he sees the facade of his childhood, pretty much, but the other guy is just holding on to it. It's really weird.
Yeah, well, like, it's interesting because the guy who denies everything his father did had a very loving relationship with his father. Like, he was, you know, a loved child. Whereas the other guy did not. So maybe it's part of that emotional disconnect that allowed him to be able to accept the truth about his father. And, you know, that's a really, really interesting thing to think about. The idea of not everyone is a monster all the time. You brought this up when we were talking about Mel Gibson last week. No one's their worst act. And so we have someone who cannot picture their father, this good man in their head, doing something that awful because of the man he knew at home. And yet we have on the other side someone who can picture their father doing something that awful specifically because of the man he knew at home.
Yeah.
You know, there's this idea of disconnecting yourself from the horrors in which you are committing, and it's something that, you know, you can observe with the Nazis, and not to get too modern political with it, but I think it's interesting to note that soldiers who pilot drones from here in the States are getting PTSD from the actions they're committing, but the thing is, they're flying the drone, carrying out the mission, which often results in a lot of collateral damage and innocent deaths, and then they're going home to their families and eating dinner. And so you have, no matter how you feel about the justification for drone strikes, you have someone who is doing something awful, which is killing people who have done nothing wrong, and then they go home and they live a normal life, but somewhere in the back of their head they know what they've done, and it's seriously fucking with them. And I think the normality of their life is really confronting them in that moment, which is probably why the PTSD is coming on. It's just such a... sorry, I'm getting a little emotional talking about all that. Laugh at my emotionality. Yeah, I'm sorry. Dead kids make me cry.
Yeah, it's a really fucked up thing, right? And
right.
It's really fucked up.
It's this interesting idea of, can you look at someone who's... It's such a hard thing to talk about, but you often hear that the families of serial killers just being so shocked by what they've found out about the person once it comes out, and just that idea of people living these completely separate lives. And I don't know, man, I cannot understand how he's a grown man in his 70s or 80s and cannot accept evidence that is put right in front of his face.
Oh, like the part where they're in the field where, like, they just, all those people were, like, lined up and shot in the head.
Mm-hmm.
That was just so chilling and weird. Like, that's creepy.
Yeah.
And he's just like, the guy's just like, accept it. please. And then he's just like, no.
And then his friend just fucking walks away because he can't fucking stand it. And it's weird because, like, you go from the beginning of this movie where it's like half an hour in, I think, where we see them both sit down and talk in the auditorium or whatever for the first time. Yeah. And they know each other. They've known each other for years. And he says, "You're my friend, but when it comes to this, I cannot possibly understand where your mind is at."
Yeah.
And then by the end of this, as he spends just all this time going to all these different places, interacting with him on this issue over and over and over again, he's not able to have that disconnect anymore. It's an interesting idea to try to, and I think it's healthy to be able to separate someone's politics or beliefs to one degree or another from who they are and how nice a person they are. But this is kind of a good example of when it's not possible to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. When someone has beliefs or ideas or politics that are so objectively awful that you can't possibly associate with that person and be okay with yourself anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, there's very few times, but when they're like, it's a really big issue. And this is one of those cases where you can't be serious and consider this guy your friend while he's like refusing to condemn a Nazi.
Yeah.
It's just like, and it's not a Nazi who just like, it's not just a random Nazi. It's like a fairly high up, right? And I love when they're in that one room where the guy was like addressing their plan to institute and to implement the final solution. And he's like, "So you're telling me that your father was standing right here, and he looked at him and said, 'Here's our plan to kill this many million people.' And you looked at your father, and your father just went and clapped." I thought that was hilarious. I'm like, yes, exactly. Like, really? That's what happened? And your father sitting there clapping? Yeah.
It's so bizarre to me. I have such a hard time, and I don't know, man, like, I would like to think that if I was presented with this much evidence about a thing, I would break down and accept it. I cannot, off the top of my head, recall something where I've been so emotionally connected to a thing that I can't accept the truth about it. But I'm trying so hard to understand where this guy is coming from, and even understanding his father being a good father. It's really hard for me to wrap my head around, man. To try to create that disconnect with someone, between someone's actions and how you feel about them.
It's really not like what you say you believe. It's not what you say you believe. It's what you act upon, right? So this goes multiple ways, right? So there's a like when you talk about things like today in the Middle East, talk about like radical Islam, right? So there's certain amount of Muslims that like may say that they would follow Sharia law to like the fullest extent or they wish to, and they like would like to implement that in like Western society. They may say that and stuff like that, but what matters is the people that are actually willing to act on that, right? It's about the people that are willing to act on it, not the people who say that they believe it but deep down don't, because they won't act upon it necessarily. But his father's acting upon it. So it doesn't matter what he says he believes, because in this, he's acting upon the horrible beliefs that people think he has. But he's still acting upon them, right? So your actions matter. It doesn't matter what you say you believe, because what you say you believe, you could you can be dishonest with yourself about what you think you believe, right? And what matters is what people are actually willing to act on it. And if you act on it, that's the important part. You get a pass in most societies for being able to have horrible thoughts but not act upon them. But when you act upon them, it's different, right?
I mean, yeah, everyone has their fantasy about killing their boss or whatever.
Exactly.
But it is what you do, not what you say and what you think so much. And, like, that's the thing. That's why I think it's okay to, at least to some degree, some reasonable degree, separate a person from their politics, from their beliefs. And, you know, you can still disagree with those beliefs, and you can still think that it colors your view of that person in a certain way. But I'm not sure where the line is between someone having awful beliefs and, like, what constitutes going so far as to act on those.
No, yeah, like in America, like an example, like you can talk about how, like, in America, a lot of Christians, like, people argue all the time that, like, the Bible is anti-gay, right? But there's a lot of Christians in America that aren't going to act on those aspects of the Bible, even if they claim to be Christians, right? So it doesn't matter. It's just kind of like the word, what a Christian is, just kind of gradually changes pretty much. What an effective Christian, like what it is actually, what the kinds of Christians that actually exist. As that becomes more like more things become more socially acceptable within that faith, like it doesn't matter what, like, the doctrine that they claim to say they believe says. It's what they act upon. It's what you actually act upon that ultimately matters.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting to discuss, like, how far you have to act in order to do it, in order to have crossed that line. Like, is voting for Trump bad enough? It's a weird idea.
It
Okay.
also comes from, like, a place of intentions. Like, if you honestly, so there's a certain point where that's no longer valid. Like, you can't say, well, I thought my intentions were good. I thought the Holocaust was good. So, like, there's a certain line where you cross that. But to a certain degree, with someone voting for Trump, they might be so ignorant that they actually are like, yes, this is, and I don't want to say every Trump voter is really ignorant. Maybe there's some out there that have some amazing argument that I've never heard. But, you know, if someone's ignorant and they honestly think they're doing the world a favor, that's different than someone that doesn't think that, right?
And it's weird because this episode will be posted after the election. For everyone listening, we were recording this on the 7th at like 8 o'clock at night, so mere hours away from knowing the answer that you now know listening to that. I don't know, man. Let's talk about something else besides the... I mean, it's a weird thing. Let's talk about something else besides the main driving conflict of the fucking movie. What are some other thoughts you have not related to the guy that just cannot accept his father's actions?
So the other guy had he couldn't stop himself from just saying all these horrible things about his father, and it was really it was. And then when he kind of broke down, like, the psychology of his father at the end, where he's like, my father wanted to be like an innocent child on the day that he was taken to the gallows, and he's like, he wanted to be like blessed like he was when he was going to school and stuff like that, like by, like, the priest or whatever. Like, that was really kind of creepy to think that, like, that he, like, what happens when you're literally a Nazi and then the Germans lose the war, and then everyone's after you? Like, what the hell happens at that point? That's the scariest thing on earth. That's like a great idea for a movie.
Oh, about, like, Nazis trying to survive?
Yeah, and it's just, like, really, all of them are really, like, despicable characters, but, like, they're real people, but they're still really bad, but they're real people, so you kind of just connect with them on a human level, but you still condemn all of their actions, and, like, that'd be great. And you periodically forget, like, oh yeah, I forgot why these guys are on the run. Because they're fucking Nazis, that's why.
You want to make the sympathetic Nazi movie, Rasco, you go do that. You'll be very much alone in Hollywood.
Well, no, it's not that they're sympathetic, it's that they're horrible fucking people, and that, like, you keep forgetting that you're watching a movie about a bunch of Nazis, and you're like, oh, wait a second, these guys deserve everything that's happening to them.
It's an interesting idea. I don't know, it's so weird to see the humanity in some of these people, because the Nazis have pretty much just become, history's villains. I think Inglourious Bastards proved you can do anything you want to a Nazi on film, and people will be okay with it. I'm surprised we didn't get a Nazi getting raped in Inglourious Bastards. Like, I legitimately think you could do it. And people have joked about, like, raping Hitler. Like, Louis C.K. has a joke about, everyone talks about time traveling and going to kill Hitler. Well, not me. I'd go rape him. Because then he wouldn't do any of that shit if he got raped by me. And so there's this idea of how do you show Nazis as... I mean, the thing that scares me the most about Nazis and a lot of these, monsters of history is they're all people. This idea that anyone can do that, anyone can become that, is the most terrifying aspect of it.
What's creepy is that, what's really creepy about it is that, like, everyone is capable of so much more than they think they are. Both good and bad, right? Like, anyone can be molded into something great or horrible. And that's what's so... And it can be way more extreme one of those directions than you think, right? You can be really bad.
Yeah. And so it's like... It's interesting to talk about the way in which history is gathered, and you get to see a lot of it in this, wherein they... like, you just got done with high school... quite a while ago now, actually. I gotta quit saying that. But you got out of high school somewhat recently, more recently than I did. But I remember my history education in high school as opposed to the history classes I took in college. You're used to learning history from a book, right?
Yeah.
Book, documentary, whatever. Whereas history books are created, history books are made primarily by sources, so it's a lot like journalism. You have to find people who were there that witnessed it. You have to find documentation that backs up their stories, and without those things, you can't really compile history in an academic sense. One of the interesting ways to look at what is historically provable and not is, I know that I ate a meal at a restaurant at some point last week. Let's say I had lunch at Subway on Thursday, just for the sake of argument. There's no way to historically prove that other than my claim that I did, and if maybe you can find a receipt somewhere. But, like, even though I say I did, there's no way to, like, historically prove that, because you can't just take someone's claim. You have to take corroborating evidence, factual documentation, something like that. So, to see that documentation come up here and there throughout this was really interesting. And to see those old home movies and, footage of the German ghettos was just really, really, on an academic level, fascinating to me. Because you rarely get to see all the little pieces come together in that way.
Yeah, what kept shocking me was how it didn't look that old to me, which is what was weird. Like, I know World War II was a long time ago, but still, relatively, it's not. And to see, like, how somehow very familiar all of that footage looked to our world still today was creepy. Because it feels like such a crazy time where it was just the world was hell.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago, but there are plenty of people who are still alive today that lived through it. and these two guys are them, are in that group. Yeah, I was really fascinated by the take that the guy had, the one who accepted what his father had done, Nicholas or something like that, I think his name was. It was just interesting because not only did he accept it, but he honestly felt like a lot of, not necessarily guilt, because you can never kill a man for what his father's done.
Yeah.
But there is a weight to him that might be part of why the other guy doesn't want to even acknowledge it. There's a sense of responsibility or a sense of mourning that this guy carries around with him quite often, and it comes out a lot throughout the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I don't know, man. How did you feel about the guy who was in the middle of this? Because it's not like he was just an outside academic; he was actually directly connected to both of them.
That was the creepiest part about it, was because it was like actually very personal for him,
Mm-hmm.
and like for him to have those conversations with the other guy who who just couldn't accept that his father was a horrible person, and the guy's just like, no, he was great, and it's just like, dude, literally, my family is dead because of people like him, and you're saying that it's okay.
Yeah. Like when they go to the town in which it all happened, and he talks about, I had never really looked into my own extended family that died here, but I realized that there were roughly 80 members in it, all in this small town. And of those 80 people, my grandfather was the only survivor. That was so heavy to me. The way the Nazis just fucking cleared out towns. Because we all have seen the footage or heard the stories about the concentration camps. We've all seen like the footage of Dachau and Auschwitz and stuff. But that was only like the industrialized part of it. There was like just this town by town sweeping of the Jewish population, and they had to come up with, for lack of a better word, clever ways to kill them efficiently, which is where the factories eventually came from. They had to come up with ways to eliminate Jews with expediency and without having to waste a ton of resources doing it. So you had a lot of times where like a town would be locked up in a barn and it would be lit on fire. That whole discussion of the people going single file into the sandpit, getting shot in the head. Just all of that is so... Like, someone thought that out is the crazy part. The way my manager comes and sits down with me and the rest of the work crew at the factory and says, okay, here's what we're going to do because we want to get this, and this done, so we're going to do it this way because it'll be the quickest, most efficient way to do it. Someone thought that out with human lives on the line.
The devil's arithmetic.
Right? I don't know, man. I find it all...
Yeah, it's
inconceivable, maybe?
Here's what's so ridiculous about it, is that it's such a blunt, it's like just a sledgehammer to solve an issue, right? So, like, just imagine you're Germany, right? And your country is just in economic turmoil and yada, yada, yada. This guy comes along, and he's like, here's the solution. Gather up all the Jews, and we kill them all. our problems will be solved. Like, that's just ridiculous, dude. That's fucking crazy.
I mean, you're seeing it happen, though, right? God, it's so weird to talk about this just before the election because, well, I'm not going to accuse Trump of planning mass murder or whatever. You're just seeing the seeds of it. It is telling that that Holocaust survivors are like saying that Trump seems familiar.
You know, it's this idea that Trump comes in and he says, look, your problems are caused by these specific people, and these are the people that you need to target with all of the hatred that you have. These are the people. It's these immigrants, and it's this religion, and it's the media, and the media sucks. But the idea that you should try to like actively hate upon the media as to like make it stop doing its job, that's bad.
That's fascism.
Yeah, that's fascism, and it's hard to argue that it's not. It's fascist tendencies that Donald Trump does have, and they're there. I mean, like, maybe you're okay with that. I mean, you know, it's forget everything you think you know. Maybe that's what you've done, and now you think fascist. But we've seen this happen before, right? So, you know, it is scary. It is scary. Maybe you don't think that he means all of that, but that is a big risk. That's a big gamble to, you know, vote on him thinking that you think he's just saying all of this stuff and he doesn't really believe it.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, it's too late now for this conversation, right?
Yeah, it's over.
It's after the fact by now. And so it's hard not to think of that for us recording right now, day before. I don't know what the context of this episode's going to be, man.
Yeah.
Because either it's going to seem, oh, they just got all worked up and worried over nothing, or it's going to be like someone watching this particular episode is going to be like, holy shit, I didn't think of any of this. Or who knows what. I don't know. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about with the documentary?
It was very, very well filmed.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed with some of the shots. I like some of like the human moments and some of the humor that was presented in it. And you know, in just the right places. Like they talk about the whole family drama with the one guy's family and how, you know, his wife went to Hitler so that she wouldn't be divorced and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, she didn't want the divorce. Funny thing is, if she'd accepted the divorce, this house would still be mine. And he started laughing because it is kind of funny in like a really weird way, but it's kind of humorous. And then you have like the moment where they're in the governor's mansion or whatever it was, and he's like, this bathtub, I've looked for one like it my whole life. I've never found another where you get to step down into it. Never found another bathtub like that.
Yeah.
Just like there's something really human about that.
Yeah, no, that's what's so crazy is that like he was there, like that's his bathtub, and like there's so much history behind all of those, everything there, right?
Yeah, I love just the history of the mundane of the everyday. Like people say Pawn Stars should not be on the History Channel and all this stuff, and I'll agree with the way they present the show and do the stupid like fake drama and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That gets annoying, but I did enjoy watching Pawn Stars just because of the background they'd give on just random crap from back in the day, you know?
Yeah.
Some of it was bullshit, but some of the other stuff was just kind of neat. Okay. Do we want to do a rating on a documentary?
Sure.
Alright, you go first.
I really, really like this. And like I just turned it on and it instantly like hooked me, and I really liked it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 intellectually dishonest Nazis.
Once again, I'm so glad I don't have to visualize any of this, because I don't know what I would do there. Yeah, I'm gonna have to... Like, honestly, I don't have any complaints about this other than the obvious, which is, wow, that guy's seriously a fucking Nazi. So I'll give it 5 out of 5 bathtubs that you get to step in.
Well, you couldn't find that many of those, because you can never find another one, so...
Right?
You can only give it 1 if that's the case. But I'm willing to bet that you could find many intellectually dishonest Nazis. Plenty of those, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, Rasco, what are we talking about? Wait, hold on. Let me make sure of something real quick. Okay, this...
Oh, crap. I haven't picked something for next week.
Thursday's going... Braveheart's going up on the... Oh, wait. This episode's going up on the 10th. Wait, really? Is it? No. Braveheart's going up on the 10th. This episode's going up on the 17th. Hi, people watching this on the 17th. So, yeah, you're gonna end us off here with whatever you pick.
Okay, so it's gotta be... So, it can be a movie?
Yeah.
Okay,
Movie or, it's whatever. I picked Bombshells to start us off, so...
Wait, hold on. Have you ever reviewed... Titanic?
No.
Would you want to do Titanic?
Wow, just way to pick all the 3 to 4 hour movies, Rasco. You sure you don't want to do Amadeus? Oh, sure, fuck it. Titanic it is.
Alrighty, Titanic.
Okay. Everyone, please join us for Titanic next week as we end off the mini-sodes for History Month. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Walrus.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.